Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of supercommunicators.
Ooh, exciting.
You bet. Our listeners sent in some excerpts from Charles Duhigg's book, Supercommunicators.
Interesting.
We're going to break it down, see what makes these masters of connection tick.
Love that.
We've got selections from the prologue, chapters 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, plus a little bonus material from the guide to using these ideas. Ready to decode the secrets of these communication gurus.
I am ready. Duhigg does such a brilliant job.
He does. Weaving together those real-life stories and the research.
Like really insightful stuff.
So much to uncover.
Absolutely.
Why don't we kick things off with
Heis.
Felix Segala.
Oh, yeah.
Duhigg introduces him as the epitome of a supercommunicator.
Yes, Felix. He's a great example.
Okay, how so?
Of how these supercommunicators operate, right?
Right.
So he's being interviewed by this team of scientists. They're studying persuasion and negotiation, too, for the Department of Defense. You'd think they'd be the experts in communication.
You would think.
But Felix doesn't try to, impress them with his knowledge or anything.
What does he do?
Turns the tables.
Oh.
No. Starts asking them questions, personal questions, about their lives, favorite memories, even their families.
Wow. Bold move.
It is. And what's fascinating is this. It completely disarmed them. They ended up feeling really connected to him. They'd known him for ages.
So he basically bypassed all the barriers.
Yes.
The ones we put up in those professional settings.
Exactly.
And he created a space for genuine human connection.
Exactly.
So what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from Felix? What was it?
Well, it wasn't just that he asked questions.
Okay.
It was the type of questions.
Why? So
He focused on getting to know them. Not just experts in their field. He was genuinely curious about their lives, their experiences, and that curiosity, it was contagious.
Okay, so that leads us to
Duhigg's.
Yes. Duhigg's concept of learning conversations.
I love this part.
Have you ever noticed how certain conversations just feel good?
All the time.
Like you're walking away feeling energized, connected.
Oh, yes.
Those are the ones.
Yes.
Where we're not just exchanging information, right? But we're actually learning about each other, sharing thoughts, feelings.
Listening. Don't forget listening.
Maybe most importantly, listening to what the other person has to say.
That's key.
Duhigg actually ties this into a neurological phenomenon called neural entrainment.
Okay.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
How so?
Basically, when we connect, on a deep level,
Yeah.
our brain waves, they start syncing up.
Whoa.
It's like our brains are dancing together.
I love that.
And supercommunicators, like Felix,
Yeah.
they seem to have a knack for it, this neural entrainment thing.
Fascinating.
So they're not just being nice. They're creating a neurological connection. I love that.
Me too.
How Duhigg backs this up?
Walk-fit.
Hard science.
Yeah.
All these touchy-feely concepts.
Yeah.
But there's science behind them. Okay, let's move on to the matching principle.
Okay.
Duhigg uses this story of Jim Lawler, a CIA recruit,
Okay.
to illustrate this.
All right.
So Lawler, he's tasked with recruiting this person, Yasmin, from a nation that was, let's say, not friendly to the U.S.
Okay.
His initial attempts, textbook, CIA, right, promises of a better life, money, the whole 9 yards.
Classic spy stuff.
But Yasmin wasn't buying it. Suspicious. Guarded. So Lawler tries something different.
Like what?
Instead of focusing on what he could offer her, he opened up about himself.
Really?
His vulnerability.
Interesting.
Doubts, fears about being a CIA officer. And that vulnerability, that willingness to show his human side, it was the breakthrough.
Wow.
Created trust, rapport, something all those traditional techniques couldn't.
Makes you think.
It does. It's like when a friend confides in you, the whole dynamic shifts. You feel closer, more connected. Makes you wonder.
Wonder what?
If we rely too much on those polished, professional personas.
It certainly does raise a question whether authenticity is a more powerful tool.
Then we give it credit for.
For sure. And, Duhigg brings up research.
Oh, yeah. Whose research?
By Bo Sievers.
Okay.
Who studied consensus building. But get this, he did it by monitoring people's brain waves.
What? Yeah.
During conversations.
They were hooked up to brain scanners while chatting.
It was intense. But
what did he find?
He found that the successful conversations often involve this neural alignment.
Yeah.
Their brainwaves were syncing up.
So I'm guessing the people who are good at matching their communication style to the other person, they were the ones fostering this alignment.
It wasn't about mimicking, though, or being fake. It was about being attuned to their mood energy, subtly reflecting that back, like a dance.
A dance, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's less about the perfect script
and
more about being present, reading the room, and responding in a way that makes the other person seen and heard.
That's it.
That brings us to another type of conversation. Duhigg explores. It's the what's this really about conversation.
Ooh, interesting.
He uses this gripping courtroom drama.
Okay.
The trial of Leroy Reed.
Oh, right.
To set the scene.
Gotcha.
So Leroy's case, more complex than it seemed.
Okay. How so?
He was an ex-convict, but legally bought a gun.
Uh-huh.
But then he's arrested because, as a felon, he was prohibited from owning one.
Ah, I see.
And the jury, they were deadlocked. Couldn't agree on a verdict.
Makes sense.
That's where John Boley comes in.
Okay.
A juror who, surprise, surprise,
what
embodies a lot of those
traits
of a supercommunicator.
Okay.
Instead of getting bogged down in the legal technicalities, he focused on understanding what each juror really wanted.
Now that's interesting.
Was it about upholding the law, showing mercy, or just getting out of there before dinner?
That's so crucial. So often we get caught up in the surface level arguments, without recognizing those deeper needs, the motivations, driving the conversation.
Once Boley understood what everybody really wanted, he reframed the conversation as a problem-solving exercise.
Yeah.
Finding a solution that,
addressed everyone's concerns.
Exactly.
Smart.
It wasn't about winning or losing. It's about finding a way to, expand the pie, so to speak.
I like that analogy.
This is something we can all apply, right?
Totally.
On our own lives. Next time you find yourself in a disagreement, at work, family, even online, take a step back and ask yourself.
Okay, what's the question?
What's this really about? What are those underlying needs, those desires that aren't being expressed?
Good advice.
Duhigg even gives us some tips.
Oh, I love tips.
For recognizing those. What's this really about? Signals.
Tell me more.
Pay attention to those seemingly off-topic comments.
Oh, I see.
Maybe someone mentions a deadline or expresses frustration about a recent email.
Okay.
Those could be clues that there's something more going on beneath the surface.
Right.
That's your cue. To dig a little deeper, ask clarifying questions. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm sensing some tension here.
Uh-huh.
What are your biggest concerns about this situation?
That makes sense.
By bringing those unspoken needs to light. Right?
Yeah.
You can transform a potentially contentious conversation
into
a collaborative problem-solving session.
Nice.
And who knows? You might just find yourselves coming up with a solution that everyone can get behind. Now, let's shift gears.
Okay. What are we shifting to?
Let's talk about feelings.
Feelings. Okay. Feelings, huh? Can be tricky.
Especially in lied professional settings. Or high-stakes conversations.
Oh, for sure. But Duhigg argues that they're crucial to building that genuine connection.
Okay, so
how do we do that? He introduces us to Nicholas Epley, a psychologist who decided to teach a group of, hedge fund managers.
Hedge fund managers about their emotions.
How to talk about them.
Hedge fund managers and feelings. That's a interesting combination.
It is. But he was fascinated by this idea that vulnerability can be a trigger for emotional connection.
Okay.
He had this theory that even in that cutthroat world of finance, people crave deeper connections.
Even if they don't always show it.
Right.
So how did he go about teaching these masters of the universe to open up?
Well, he started with this technique called the fast friends procedure.
Okay, what's that?
It involves asking these increasingly personal questions designed to, accelerate insight.
I could see how that would work in a controlled setting.
Yeah.
But try that with a stranger on the bus.
Right. Excuse me, but what's your deepest fear?
Exactly. Not exactly practical for everyday life.
Not really.
So, Epley, he adapted his approach.
How?
Focused on asking deep questions. That indirectly. elicit emotions.
I see. So instead of asking someone point blank, are you happy?
Right.
You might ask, what are you looking forward to this week?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a space for them to, like, share their feelings.
Right.
Without feeling put on the spot.
Without feeling interrogated.
Yeah. It's about creating that sense of safety and invitation. And don't forget those follow-up questions.
Oh, yeah, those are crucial.
They show you're really interested and that you're listening, right? Not just to their words, but to the emotions behind them.
Makes all the difference. It's like you're saying, tell me more. I'm here for it.
Yes.
So we've talked about learning conversations, the matching principle. What's this really about, conversations? We've even touched on feelings.
A lot of good stuff.
Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about nonverbal communication.
Right. Words are only part of the equation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our body language, tone of voice, even our laughter, they all convey like volumes of information.
Tons.
And Duhigg, he illustrates this beautifully with the story of Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady, the creators of The Big Bang Theory.
I love that show.
Me too. But they were struggling to convey Sheldon and Leonard's
Their
emotions authentically in the pilot episode.
Well, those characters aren't exactly known for their,
emotional expressiveness.
Right. So they came up with this brilliant solution.
Which was?
They had the actors repeat the word hi.
Just hi.
Over and over again. But with all these varying moods and energy levels.
Wow. So simple.
Yeah.
Effective.
Surprisingly so. It really conveyed those subtle nuances of the scene.
It's a good reminder how we say something
Yeah.
can be just as important as the words themselves, it makes me think of.
Oof.
Emotional intelligence, which Duhigg also talks about. Oh, right.
It's not just about being in touch with our own emotions, but also read and respond to the emotions of others.
Right.
And that brings us to the work of Terrence McGuire,
Okay.
a psychiatrist who was tasked with selecting astronauts for NASA.
Wow.
You'd think that would be all about
Technical skills.
physical fitness.
It makes sense. Like, can you survive a launch, fix a leaky oxygen tank, all that.
Exactly. But McGuire realized that. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Just as critical.
Yeah.
Especially for missions where astronauts are spending months in a confined space.
Right. Under immense pressure.
So he started analyzing these audio recordings of interviews.
Okay.
But he wasn't listening to what the candidate said. He was focused on their laughter.
Their laughter. Interesting.
He noticed that the candidates who were good at matching his laughter.
Okay.
Not just laughing along, but mirroring his mood,
Yeah.
And energy level.
Yeah.
They tended to be more successful astronauts.
Really?
Better at building rapport with crewmates.
Yeah.
Navigating tough situations.
That makes sense. You're stuck in a tiny spaceship for months. You need someone who can pick up on your cues and respond accordingly. It speaks to the power of emotional contagion.
What's that?
This idea that we can catch emotions from others.
Like a cold.
Exactly. And when we consciously match someone's mood, their energy, it creates this sense of understanding. Empathy shows that we're on the same wavelength.
It's like saying, I get you, I'm with you.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's dive into another layer of communication. This is social identities. Duhigg uses the term.
What term?
Who are we? Conversations.
Okay.
To describe these, often complex, potentially sensitive exchanges.
Right.
He shared the story of Jay Rosenblum,
Okay.
a doctor who was frustrated
Yeah.
by his inability to convince parents to vaccinate their kids. That's a tough one.
So Rosenblum, he tried everything. Data, logic, even those. Emotional appeals.
Yeah.
But he kept hitting a wall. He eventually realized he was overlooking something.
What's that?
The profound influence of social identities on these conversations.
I see.
It wasn't just one type of parent who resisted. It was liberals, conservatives, libertarians, people who typically disagree on everything else, right? But they were united in their distrust of vaccines.
Interesting. Makes you wonder if it was less about the vaccines themselves
And more about
what they represented.
Exactly. It was about aligning with a certain social group, signaling your beliefs and values to the world. This led Rosenblum to the work of
The work of.
Claude Steele,
Okay.
a psychologist who coined the term stereotype threat.
Oh, right. Can you remind us what that is?
Yeah, and how it plays into these conversations.
Oh, for sure. So stereotype threat.
Yeah.
Is this idea that simply being aware of a negative stereotype about your group can actually undermine your performance, even if you don't believe it yourself.
So if you're constantly told that women are bad at math, you might actually do worse on a math test.
Even if you're a math whiz.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. The anxiety from the stereotype takes up mental bandwidth, interferes with your focus.
Wow. So how do we navigate these who are we conversations in a way that avoids triggering this stereotype threat and actually fosters connection?
Well, Rosenblum found one effective strategy was this.
Yeah.
Focusing on finding common social identities with his patients, emphasizing their differences. He looked for points of connection, shared hobbies, family backgrounds, even just living in the same neighborhood.
Like saying, hey, we're more alike than we are different.
Exactly. And by highlighting those shared identities, he was able to build rapport, create a more receptive environment for communication.
Makes sense. Duhigg also highlights this fascinating example from Iraq. A researcher named Salma Mosa, she was studying social cohesion in a town that had been, ravaged by conflict between Christians and Muslims.
Right.
And she organized a soccer league.
Oh, cool.
With mixed teams of Christian and Muslim players.
I love that.
But it wasn't just about playing soccer together, right? Musa deliberately structured the league to encourage players to think about identities
beyond
religion. Each team had assigned roles, like goalkeeper, captain, even someone in charge of bringing snacks.
Smart.
It gave them a chance to connect.
Yeah.
Based on their skills, and contributions, rather than their religious background.
It shifted the focus from us versus them to we're all in this together.
Did it work?
It was incredibly effective. Players on those mixed teams, they reported feeling more comfortable interacting with people from the other group, even outside the league.
So it shows that even in, deeply divided communities, there's always potential for connection and understanding. If we can find creative ways to bridge those divides, it makes you wonder if we could apply this approach to other seemingly intractable conflicts.
It certainly raises some interesting possibilities. Musa actually identified 3 key elements that contributed to the success.
And those are?
First, draw out your conversational partners, multiple identities. Remind everyone that we're complex individuals with a rich tapestry of experiences, affiliations. Ensure that everyone's on equal footing. Avoid dominating the conversation or highlighting your own status or expertise.
Okay, and the third element?
Manage your environment. Sometimes a simple change of setting can, make a big difference in how comfortable people feel, sharing their true selves.
Those are such practical and powerful tips by creating that space where people feel safe to express themselves authentically.
Right.
We can foster more open, honest dialogue, even about sensitive topics.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's get real for a minute. We've all been in those conversations that just go off the rail.
Oh, yeah, the ones that leave you feeling drained, frustrated, even angry.
Those are the hard conversations that Duhigg explores next. He uses the example of Netflix, their journey towards radical candor.
I've heard of that.
To illustrate the potential pitfalls of unbridled communication.
Makes sense.
Netflix was famous for encouraging employees to be brutally honest with each other. But when it came to those sensitive topics, like prejudice and bias, things got messy.
How so?
There was this one incident involving Jonathan Friedland, Netflix's chief communications officer.
Right.
And he used a racially insensitive word during a meeting. Despite apologizing, he was ultimately fired, sparking a debate about whether Netflix's culture, radical candor, had gone too far.
It highlights that challenge, of navigating sensitive topics, especially in the workplace.
How do you encourage honesty without creating a culture of fear and blame?
That's the question.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And Netflix realized they needed to refine their approach. They started implementing diversity and inclusion training, helping employees understand their own biases and learn to communicate more respectfully. Across differences, they also started emphasizing the importance of
belong
alongside diversity and inclusion.
So it's not just about having people from different backgrounds in the room.
Right.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels valued, respected.
Seems like a crucial distinction.
It is. It's about creating that sense of psychological safety.
Gaming.
The belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up, even if you
make a mistake. So how do we create that kind of environment in the workplace and in our personal lives too? It sounds like it's about creating a space, right?
Yeah.
Where it's okay to disagree, to make mistakes, and to learn from each other without that fear of, judgment or retribution. But how do we actually do that? Especially when things get really intense.
Well, Duhigg has a few strategies.
Okay, like what?
First, you got to establish some clear guidelines for communication.
Okay.
Like what topics are totally off limits, what kind of language is not okay, what happens if someone violates those guidelines.
Makes sense. Having those boundaries helps create that sense of safety, predictability, right?
Exactly, especially when you're discussing those sensitive topics.
Right. It's like the rules of the game before you start playing.
Exactly. And second, you want to create a sense of belonging. Emphasize that everyone's perspective, it's valued, even if it's different from the majority view.
It's about fostering that that culture of inclusion where everyone feels like they have a seat at the table.
Yeah, exactly. And that their voice matters.
And finally,
how to prioritize psychological safety.
Which means
make it clear that it's okay to disagree, to make mistakes, to ask for help.
It's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable taking risks, being vulnerable, without that fear of being,
ridiculed or punished.
Exactly.
It reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, the importance of relationships.
Oh, right. Duhigg spends a good chunk of the book on this, exploring the connection between communication and happiness.
So what's the connection?
He talks about one of the most fascinating studies ever done
on
human happiness. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
This study followed this group of men for over 80 years.
Whoa, 80 years.
Tracking their health, their relationships, their careers, just their overall life satisfaction.
It's like the holy grail of happiness research, right? What did they find? Was there some kind of magic formula for a happy life? Well, the most striking finding was the role of relationships, our well-being. The guys who had close, supportive relationships with family, friends, romantic partners, they were not only happier, healthier, and lived longer too.
So it's not about the money or the career success.
Right.
It's about those deep connections with the people in our lives.
And this is where supercommunication comes in.
Okay, how so?
Those skills, those techniques we've been discussing, like listening deeply, asking meaningful questions, creating that safe space for vulnerability. Those are the ingredients that nourish strong relationships.
So supercommunicators are basically master relationship builders.
I'd say so. They get it. They understand that connection. It's not something that just happens.
Something you have to work for.
You have to create it through intentional communication.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, a lot of really fascinating insights from Duhigg's book. What do you say? We tried to distill all of this.
Yeah.
Get into some key takeaways.
Love that idea. Having that concise summary can really help,
Right.
Make sure those key points stick.
Absolutely. Okay, here are 10 key takeaways from supercommunicators that I think we can all apply to our lives. Number one, supercommunicators. They're made, not born. They develop those specific techniques to foster connection, to create that sense of, closeness.
Okay, number two.
Learning conversations are the building blocks of strong relationships.
Right.
They involve genuine curiosity, active listening, and a willingness to share your thoughts and feelings authentically.
Love it. What about number three?
The matching principle.
Yeah.
This one's all about being attuned to the other person, right?
Yeah.
Their mood, their energy, and then subtly reflecting that back.
Like a dance.
Exactly. Where both partners are moving in sync. Okay. Number four.
Hit me with it.
What's this really about? Conversations.
Those are good.
These involve digging beneath the surface.
Right.
To understand those underlying needs.
Yeah.
And motivations that are driving the conversation. Number five, how do we feel? conversations.
Ah, yes.
These leverage vulnerability and those deep questions to trigger emotional connection.
Creating a space where it's safe to be yourself.
Exactly. Number 6.
Okay.
Emotional intelligence. It's not just about recognizing our own emotions,
right,
but being sensitive to the emotions of others.
Being able to, like, read those nonverbal cues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And responding in a way that builds, understanding, empathy. Number 7. Who are we? Conversations.
These can be tricky.
They require navigating those social identities, right?
Yeah.
And stereotypes. With sensitivity and awareness, it's about recognizing that we all have multiple identities.
Right.
And finding those points of connection.
Which can help bridge those divides.
Number 8, stereotype threat.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big one.
It's a real phenomenon, and it can really undermine performance.
Setting barriers to communication.
Yeah.
By being aware of its effects, though, we can take steps to mitigate its impact. Number 9, hard conversations. They benefit from clear guidelines, a focus on belonging, and a commitment to, psychological safety.
Okay, and last but not least, number 10.
Strong relationships. They're the foundation of a happy and fulfilling life. And Supercommunicators, they excel at building and maintaining those relationships through meaningful conversations.
That is an excellent summary.
Phew, we did it.
It really captures the essence of Duhigg's insights and offers a roadmap, right, for becoming a more effective communicator.
And the beauty of it is these techniques, applicable in all sorts of situations.
From work to family life to, just casual conversations.
Okay.
It's about shifting our mindset from seeing communication as like
a transaction
to seeing it as opportunity for connection, understanding, growth.
It's about recognizing that the best conversations aren't about winning or being right,
but about creating that space
for genuine human connection to flourish.
So well said.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of supercommunicators. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to, level up your own communication skills.
Remember, becoming a supercommunicator, it's not about reaching some unattainable level of perfection.
It's about making small changes.
Intentional choices.
In how we approach our conversations.
One interaction at a time.
Until next time, keep diving deep.